Stephen, I see your work all over the place. It seems that you guys are very busy in building and doing. Maybe you can give me a short intro what you guys are doing in building, and then we get to the theme of the podcast and who you are, what you do, and how you came to what you do today.
hmm Yeah, so just give a very brief intro. So yeah, I'm Stephen, and currently serving as CEO and founder of Neuracore, which is a kind of robot learning cloud platform slash ecosystem to help basically businesses move quicker in the robot learning space. I'm also then assistant professor at Imperial College London, where I have a research group basically working on whole body control, but doing it in a kind of safe manner, right? So okay, sure, we can do a really great job of getting these robots to do some great stuff, but ultimately we need to deploy them in the wild and most likely around humans. So, how can we actually bake in safety into these end-to-end Imperial?
Let's see if we can continue because are you recording via your uh, earphones? How do you say
Yes,
this? Yeah, okay, there.
AirPods.
Okay. Mm, the the robotic space is pretty hyped at the moment. So it's good that you say robots that are not only in the lab but being deployed and doing like actual work, right? This is definitely something we're looking forward to listen more about this when we come towards the end of the podcast. But maybe you can give us a bit more background and like who you are, upbringing. I'm always interested in the in that phase to understand what is it that gives you the opportunity, the tools, and the strength to become a founder in the end.
Yeah, so I can maybe go back to, you know, where I'm originally from, which is Wales. So for those that aren't in the UK, so Wales is a country within the United Kingdom. It is its own country, actually. And yeah, kind of was there until I was uh, 18. So did my kind of entire schooling there. I actually am fluent in Welsh, which is the kind of main language in Wales. About one third of the population speaks it. So my entire education, actually, up until I was 18, was in Welsh. So I was, when I had a French class in like year eight or something, I was actually learning French through Welsh rather than English. And that was really, really great. I mean, to be frank, it's kind of a useless language if you're not in Wales. The only other place they speak it actually in the world is like a tiny, tiny population in Argentina, of all places. There's like a very tiny Welsh population there. But yeah, it's kind of useless if you're not going to stay in Wales. But I think, um, yeah, it definitely helps you. I think if you want to learn like other languages later down the line, because I did kind of like dabble in a little bit of Mandarin. I actually found it like quite easy to pick up because like my mouth was used to making like all these different sounds, right? Because English sounds nothing like Welsh. So yeah, where it was a disadvantage, of course, is when I went to study at Imperial, and then I was learning all of these terms basically in maths again.
Mm.
So like they would be like, oh yeah, you take the square root of this, and I'd like I know it sounds stupid, but like never use the word square root. It would always be aisradd, which is what it is in Welsh. And so I had to like learn basically like maths again in terms of like the actual, uh, what everything was called. That was, I guess, one big disadvantage. But yeah, so going back to school. So yeah, I went to a very normal school. Nothing kind of fancy. It's so yeah, a comprehensive school in the UK, which is akin to basically a state school in the US. You know, there was no kind of entrance exam or anything like that. It's just like you just if you live in the catchment area, you go to that school. Um, and yeah, I would say that it was all very normal. I had a very normal upbringing. Um, and this the school I went to. Not many people kind of leave Wales. They tend to just stay there. So I guess I was definitely in the kind of minority, I guess. Um, and yeah, it was great. I had like I kind of met very normal people, I would say, like everyday people. The only con I would say is like I never felt like very much pushed, I'd say, during my school days, and that probably explains why I actually didn't start trying in school until A levels, actually. So yeah, I was very, very normal, just average person in school. I hardly studied for my exams in GCSEs, and I like did okay. I think I got something like two A's or something, bunch of B's. And it wasn't until A level did I actually kind of like something switched in me. Uh, it just changed basically. I'm still to this day trying to figure out exactly what happened. My parents didn't do anything particular. I just something changed in me from GCSEs when I started A levels, and then I just was like, okay, I should probably like work really hard now. And then ever since then, I just turned into a bit of basically a workaholic, which is not necessarily a good thing, but that's what happens. And yeah, and did very well in my A levels, and then went to Imperial and then spent. I've been in London pretty much ever since, um, barring obviously like a year or two when I've maybe gone to industry or I've gone to Berkeley for my postdoc. But pretty much spent a lot of time in London. Did my undergrad at Imperial, uh, and went on to do a PhD there as well. So literally like 10 years at Imperial, and yeah, UC Berkeley then for a postdoc, spending some time with Peter Beale, who's a really great person, and then yeah, came back then to London. Well, I loved it so much and I missed it to start up a research lab at ISIN. Then
The
yeah,
the because the other day I had somebody else. He said that he wanted to. There was some competitiveness in him, and that he studied very hard because he was not as talented as his colleagues, right? And but also this competitiveness brought him to some grades that gave him the opportunity to go overseas, right?
Mhm.
You said that your parents didn't do anything, nothing really happened, so there was no specific incident that happened that made the switch or yeah, gave you the new idea of yourself. So, but is that? I mean, you said that you thought about this a few maybe a few times, but maybe we can dig into it for a second because I'm really trying to understand what is it. Is
Yeah,
it very often it is a goal? People understand. So there's some people on the podcast. They say I've been a learner and very eager to learn from a very early age on. Some other people said I was doing okay, or was even lazy. But then I realized if I would like to do this, then I need to become good, right? So finally, you had a goal, a vision, and to reach that, you do need to study very hard. But you
yeah.
said it just happened.
I mean, what I mean by that is that I don't know objectively what it was. I can't pin it to one thing. I have a theory, and I think what happened was that I found computer science. So up until that point, I hadn't studied computer science. I mean, it wasn't a big thing, right? It would have been 2010. Of course, it was a thing, but like for people that were in school, right? You didn't have much of it. Now, of course, like 8-year-olds are learning Python, right? But back in 2010, that wasn't the case. And it's just so happened that my school, luckily, did offer an A level in computer science, computing. And I think if I have to pin it, it was probably that. Like I found a subject. I'd always been like interested in STEM. I've always been like interested in the sciences. I loved physics, chemistry. I loved all that stuff. But I wasn't like passionate about it. I found it like easy, I guess. Um, but not never driven. I would never like do extracurricular stuff in it. But I found computing, and I was literally just an addict, basically. Like I literally became addicted, like unhealthily. Like I we had to go through this book. We were learning Visual Basic, right? Was the like language they taught you for the
Mhm.
2 years. We did it in about 2 months. I went through the entire book, and I essentially finished what the rest of the course was doing for the 2 months in 2 months. 2 years in 2 months. I was like obsessed, basically. I would go home, and instead of now playing video games, like RuneScape was a big actual influence, I think, for me. I used to play that growing up. It's like a MMO for those that aren't familiar. And I was like, oh yeah, like I can make RuneScape now. That's what I want to do. Like my goal is perhaps to make RuneScape or something like that. And so I just became obsessed with coding. Yeah. And then instead of playing video games, I now just coded video games instead. And that became like my fun. So maybe that was perhaps for me the turning point where I was like, this is all I want to do in my life. Like this is now, you know, this is like living for me. And at that point, I guess that just like triggered something in my brain. And I was like, okay, well, I really want to do this. And I probably have to like do other A levels too and be good at those. So I should probably study really, really hard for those as well now. So maybe that's the best guess I have to what happened. But I also have very bad long-term memory. Like I'm really bad at remembering things, even though that was only like 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I really struggle to remember like my thinking back then, which I think is quite unusual. And so I get a lot of this like from my parents. Like I asked them, I was like, "Oh, what was I like?" And like, what do you think and things like that. So trying to just piece things together, and that's my best guess, I think.
I mean, it sounds like a very good articulated guess. Um, so thanks for giving it a try. The other thing is, you said that the majority of people that you've been surrounded with would just stay there, right? I mean, it's a nice
Yeah.
countryside. I haven't been there, but what I've seen on social, you can see it's a beautiful country with a lot of things that you can really enjoy, and especially if friends and family and there's an opportunity to stay there and work, earn good money, have a nice life. There's not too many reasons why you should go somewhere else, right? But something in you said you should go somewhere else. Was that also something that came intrinsically, maybe a feeling, or have you seen other people? Have you seen any role models, or maybe also opportunities to work in this kind of direction was only given somewhere else? Can you remember that?
So the reason to move to London was purely because of, I guess, university, right? So it wasn't like
Mm.
I had a striving desire to go to London. Um, it was more because naturally I loved the subject and I wanted to pursue that and I wanted to pursue that in the best place that I could and be around people who were like equally as passionate about it was and that's basically led me out of Wales, right? So of course like Wales has the best university there would be I guess Cardiff University, which is great university. Um, but I just wanted to see how far myself, I guess, into the best tool I could. Um, And so that kind of, I guess, drew me out of. I guess then another way to think about this is what then kept me coming back to Wales once I finished. Well, I think for that it's more to do with kind of like the hiring. Now that I actually have like my own business and everything, like it'd be very, very difficult, I think, to try and get people to go to Wales, maybe from the international community. Right? So that's, I guess, the thing stopping me going back. I've often thought about, man, it'd be great to like not only because I'm very passionate, right, about you're a British company or a European company. I'm very pro that, right? We've been asked many, many times, oh, you should just set up as a Delaware C corp, and it's like, well, no, I want to, keep it British. I want to keep it European, and part of me has wanted to go even further and be like, I want to make this a Welsh company. It would be very challenging, I think, because yeah, I think talent would be the main. Nothing else would be the big main thing. Would be like, how do you draw talent to come to Wales? Is hard.
Just last week, I talked to someone who is from Romania. He finished a PhD, is also in robotics. robotics AI, and he said that even though they have a company that is registered in Germany at the moment and maybe opening up a new branch in Switzerland, he still thinks and is looking for a way to open up some sort of school side business branch in Romania
Yeah.
because he feels also very strongly bonded to his roots. And I always appreciate this because it's not easy. It is hard, and there are easier ways to do things, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the reasons why I said I have this podcast is I wish I would have had the access to this kind of person because you can somebody can teach you things, right? But this is a very rare opportunity, or very rarely the case. But at least if you see things that you can understand what's there, right? And then you can strive to see if you could become this or how to become this. But if you're not even seeing that, so then the barrier even is, or not the barrier, but then the chances I get even lower, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks for sharing
No,
on that one.
just to add to that, I mean, I often think about, because I attribute, think what happens to the switch inside of me being computer science. Like, what would have happened if that actually hadn't happened? What would happen if computer science wasn't offered, for example? Which, believe it or not, is not that like far of a stretch because, like, my school didn't offer physics A level. So I actually had to with one of the students hop on a bus every day, every time it was time to take my physics lesson. I go to another school, which was 30 minutes away, to be able to take my physics classes and then come back. So this is during A level. So when you select subjects you want to. So yeah, I was actually quite lucky that my school offered that because, if that hadn't come about, then I may have never been switched and I would have just, yeah, I wouldn't have become a workaholic maybe. Which again, maybe is not necessarily a bad thing.
Um, but then there you can make an actual decision, right? Versus, I mean, this is a repetitive, this is a common theme here on the podcast, and there might be some people think this is totally unnecessary, but this might be because living in a different world, living in a different reality, it's not too easy to have empathy for this kind of situations. As you said, if that course wouldn't have been offered to you, you might have not find your passion and not work very, very hard. But this now goes too much into the theoretical world. Uh, Working very, very hard and then having the opportunity to go to London. Uh, was that a big topic for you in terms of this is one of the biggest city in the world, right?
Yeah.
And the culture is much different than from smaller Wales. How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have horror stories of, I was a teenager, obviously, coming from Wales, I like to, have a few drinks and go out and party. And obviously, Imperial's like very different. I guess, Imperial, it's like pulling from like the brightest minds from around the world and it just very different culture. So like not only was London a big culture shock to me in terms of like obviously like bigger and everything's more expensive and like, you can go out on a night out and get like lost. And if you've had too much to drink, that makes it even harder again to get home. But also from the actual kind of then like academic side where it's like, surrounded by all of these people and they've maybe been like, whereas I'd only been working really, really hard for like the last, 2 years. Some of these people have been working hard their entire life, sort of thing, right? And their parents have maybe put a lot of pressure on them. And so that was a big culture shock, right? In terms of me kind of, yeah, come into this world and basically, I mean, to lack of a better word, just basically being the idiot in the room I felt, right? And yeah, it's something that's I still haven't really fully recovered from. I always still feel like I'm not actually that smart, sort of thing. And it's just I've got where I am because I work just hard to compensate, like for getting that. I never really felt it feels odd because obviously like I now like work at Imperial, but like I've never really felt like I almost deserve to be there in some ways. It's a bit, yeah, and that feeling never really went away. I don't think it ever will go away. Um, and yeah, I mean, that was definitely the hardest part, I think. So London was fine. It was like a bit scary but exciting. But the actual like academic side, I think, was much much harder, right? And settling in. Yeah, I didn't even take further maths, right? So I was taking computer science. My school didn't offer further. So like I had a lot of catching up to do on top of not already feeling like underwater. So like yeah, basically my first year was like really bad. On top of me like going out and partying all the time as well, just because that's what I was doing right before coming to London. Uh, yeah, but overall a very positive thing, and I learned so much right in like my like yeah first few years at London about the academic side, but also about being independent as well. Really being thrown into the deep end. Uh, Also the financial side, right? I mean, obviously London being very, very expensive city. So yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. But looking back, it was quite a lot actually going on at that time.
I mean, maybe this session can be a realization for you to that you actually deserve it because um, nobody gave it to you. You worked very hard for a longer period of time. The majority of people are not capable slash willing, capable in terms of surrounding, right? So environmental topics, but also having the capabilities in terms of having the guts and the character and really pushing themselves towards a goal. So you need a goal also. So this is the surrounding needs to be somehow okayish, but also you
Yeah.
do need to have a vision and a goal. But without the hard work that you were mentioning, you will not. You can have the other two, but you will not get there, right? So
Mm.
I think this is also a repetitive pattern that I see on the podcast because it's mainly with founders and people who are building companies. And this working very hard for a longer period of time, and not 1 year, not 2 year, like many years, is something that uh, towards a goal. That is something that I needed to teach myself very late in life because my parents they taught me how to work, but not
Mm.
towards something, right? So I think you should look back and you should see that you worked very hard towards where you are today because this is what you wanted to do and you were able to push yourself through that. I don't know if that helps, but
No.
the part that you were still able to enjoy yourself to a certain degree, I think that is good because then I had other people that they said, I couldn't do this because I didn't have the talent and I needed to work very hard. So I couldn't enjoy that part too much. So if you were able to balance it at least a little bit, there's not too many regrets that you could have, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I probably could have partied a little bit less maybe my first year is the only regret. But because basically, I mean, the first year is like worth, I don't know, like 12% of your overall grade. So a lot of catching up to do. So it means that I had to work like even harder again for the remainder of 3 years to try and make sure I got my first. So, but yeah, no, it like looking back, obviously it was great, right? And yeah, it was so good that I got the opportunity to do that. And I mean, it made me who I am today, right? Basically. So. Yeah.
Um, the opportunity to go to the US, this is definitely something I'm interested in because here again, going out of the comfort zone, going somewhere else. Um, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah. So when you say the US, I guess you mean for the postdoc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this for me was essentially a no-brainer, right? So it's so just some context. It's, I was very lucky to be able to work with Andrew Davidson and also Dr. Ed Johns at Imperial, and you know that was absolutely amazing. And I think that I generally, looking back, couldn't have had a better supervisor than, than Andy. And the reason I say that is because, um, you know, he's coming from a very different perspective, right? So he's very much kind of like spatial AI slam, uh, and so he looks at things very very differently to how I look at them. And so that was really really great, and I think that. I wasn't living in an echo chamber where I think a lot of like academics labs sometimes do, right? Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up for debate. But there is indeed an echo chamber, right, in a lab that does just the same thing. Whereas, Andy's not necessarily afraid of just like branching out and trying something completely different. And of course, end-to-end learning, especially when I started my PhD in 2015, wasn't a thing yet, right? And so it was just starting. Like Sergey's paper was just about to come out, or had just come out, and he didn't buy it. Basically, he was like, "I don't think this is going to really work. Right? You need to model everything. Hey, like let's try it, sort of thing." And I think that's amazing. And so I did my entire 4 years being surrounded by slam people, even though I wasn't doing slam and I didn't do slam research, but I kind of made me, I think, a more kind of more well-rounded roboticist. And so, but when I got to the end, I felt, okay, I've had like one side. Now I think it's time to experience the other side. A bit more of the echo chamber. And I want to, like, echo chamber sounds like bad. I don't, there's no negative connotation when I say it. It's just, so I felt like, it'd be great if I go to a lab where there's like, it's full of believers. Right? And so obviously going to with Peter at Berkeley made perfect sense, right? You can't get a better place to go. And I was very fortunate for Peter to have me. So yeah, spent some time there. My wife moved with me as well. She's actually American, so it was great to like spend some time. But we were kind of unsure where we would like fully settle down, so it was like good chance to experience. Okay, California for a long period of time. Would we want to live here? Have children here, etc. Yeah, all very very positive. I think on all fronts.
But you said earlier on that you you are a European company, and
Mhm.
you plan to stay here. Even that doesn't mean you're not able. I mean, even that means you're still able to open other subsidiaries and branches whatsoever, right? So it's not limiting you. But you guys decided in the very end, you guys decided to come back.
We did, yeah. Um, Look, I think Silicon Valley is like an amazing place. It just wasn't us, basically. Um, we both love London. Actually, a bit of a like. I don't care too much. Like I love London and I'm very happy in London. But actually, I could have been in California as well in terms of living. But my wife, who was American, who is American, actually just really wanted to come back to London. She missed it. Um, so there was like that side of like us feeling like we belonged maybe more in London. There was also the fact of like just lifestyle and living. Like, you know, again, so the valley's a great place, but it's also kind of dangerous. And there were like stories that my wife would come back. She worked like in the city, and she'd be commuting every day, and like. Someone would try and set her hair on fire one day, and then the next day she come back and said someone like tried to kick her. It was just like these every like week was like a new story that she'd come back with of her experience on the bot. So her being a woman on her own in the community, like sometimes if it's like dark as well, it's just kind of like a scary thought. So we just thought it just like, is this somewhere we want to bring up children? And we just decided for many reasons, and of course then the Dyson opportunity as well. It just made sense for us to and stop that in pandemic.
That maybe there's a good bridge now to tell me I have a lot of people here on the podcast that have been in academia for quite a while, 10 years, 15 years, and then finally make the decision, you know what, this is not enough. I've been in this bubble for long enough, and I would like to do something else. I would like to bring my idea, the technology, the solution, or found a problem that I would like to solve outside of that world and become an entrepreneur. Was there a specific moment? Was that happening gradually? Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight here when it comes to this transition.
Yeah, so I think so. I've always known that I wanted to give like building a company a shot. And that's definitely driven from my parents. Both my parents, although I don't think they've ever used the word entrepreneur to me. They are by definition both entrepreneurs. They are, they've both had their own businesses, or both in construction actually. So my dad's like was the one kind of the construction company building the houses, and my mum would have like a rental agency in which you go out and like refurbish properties, and then so both in this kind of you know entrepreneur mindset, and it's all I've ever known. Like they're constantly working, which kind of goes back to then the whole workaholic thing. It's like, although it didn't get triggered until later, clearly it's in my DNA because definitely my parents, I would classify them as workaholics. Whether they're working on their main thing or some other side hustle, there's always something. So I think that's just always been in business. And that's probably down to them, to be honest. Even though they've never encouraged me to necessarily do it. Like my parents are very, very laid back. They've always been supportive. I couldn't ask for anything more, but they've never like told me to do anything basically in any particular direction. I've had free will to either self-destruct or go off and be successful. So which is great, right? I that. Anyway, so so it was always very clear to me that I was going to go off and start a company. I just didn't know when, because of course I'm so close to the technology. It's like if I'm going to do it, I want to make sure I choose an idea that I think actually is going to work. But I don't want to just like raise a bunch of money and then be like, hey, like yeah, that was fun. I did a business, it failed, great. Actually, if I'm going to do it, I actually want it to succeed, right? And so I've had this motivation to do it, but I've been waiting for the right moment. Like when is the right time, and what is that idea? Which of course then led to Neuracore, and which we can maybe talk about later.
It's interesting that you say that your parents didn't put this on you or didn't advise you here, but from sheer seeing and adopting, and as you said, maybe even in your DNA, this kind of adopting this kind of lifestyle, and also then become an entrepreneur, being surrounded, because I'm a huge fan of that. There's a reason why I'm so for systems that help people versus very single small opportunities and sheer will, because that is a huge selector and filter, right? So only very, very few people have that internal drive to do these kind of things, right? So it would be better to have systems to enable more people. But it is nice that you didn't took the destructive part and path and did something totally different, but actually thought, you know what, I've been in the technology long enough, so I have this deepness, this deep technology knowledge that I now can use for building a business, right? But there's still a gap between the idea and the actually, okay, let's incorporate something. And I have not only have a sexy technology, I have something I would like to solve. This is also the big topic here on the podcast: solving problems versus selling technologies and finding problems to your solution. How is
Yeah.
that for you guys?
Yeah. So I think the beautiful thing about kind of Neuracore is that actually it's kind of like essentially been like 10 years in the making, because it's solving a problem that I've had for every single time that I've moved different labs or gone to industry. Like it's the same thing that keeps popping up. I move and I'm like, great, I have to do everything that I just spent my last several years doing all from scratch all over again, i.e. the infrastructure. But that's the beautiful thing about robot learning, right? Is that you could be making beds, you could be serving coffee, or you could be like picking strawberries in a field. The core promise and the idea of robot learning, of course, is it's all data driven. So, so it made me ask them, well, why do I have to keep building every single time I move? I'm not taking the code with me. I have to rebuild everything again. And that was incredibly frustrating and slowed down every single time I moved. Like there was always this kind of like warm up period where you have to invest a lot of your time and your team's time. So when I started Dyson, when I moved back from Berkeley to London to start a research lab, like a lot of that time actually was getting the infrastructure, not only building it, but then also keeping it up to date and maintaining it, and then always like enhancing it with all of the features and so on. It took it like a big team, right? And so part of like why we hired so many then engineers rather than also just like research scientists is because we needed to maintain all of this stuff. So it was a big ask and slowed us down basically. So yeah, it's the origin story really of Neuracore is about that, like trying to make not only industry but also research just be able to move way quicker, standardizing a lot of the tools. And I can see a lot of analogies between kind of like how SaaS, the progression of SaaS, right, software as a service. So, you know, or just like the internet in general, right, and websites. If you would like launch an internet company or a SaaS company back in like, 2000 or something, well, what would you do? You'd have to like obviously build your website, but then you'd have to build the entire back end like physical infrastructure and hardware in your garage or wherever it was. Like you'd have to set up servers, you'd have your like SQL server running on there, et cetera, right? So you had this like huge like mammoth task to do on top of trying to build your business and your app. And it wasn't until then AWS came along was like, oh yeah, like you don't need to do all of this. We can handle all of that. Like everyone's doing this. Everyone's building the garage with all the servers. So why on earth are we all doing this? There's surely a solution for this. It's actually kind of how I see robotics going the exact same way. Like right now, everyone has to build all the tooling and the pipeline, plus the application they're actually trying to solve, and the thing they're trying to solve. And so I see that there's a space for this infrastructure layer that everyone can use, such that now, when you start a robotics company, you can just focus on what you actually do. I mean, you imagine if someone came to you today and said, "Yeah, I'm building this awesome like SaaS company," and you're like, "Oh, great, what cloud provider are you using?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, no, we're building it like all in house. You've got like scalable." You would think that they've lost their mind, right? Because like you wouldn't be able to move fast enough. And that's where we think the robotics is heading.
And it's also funny because I think the how AWS came together with the same thing, right? Whenever we open up a new warehouse, whenever we open up a new place, we need to do all those things again, right? So we need to get a company who's doing it for us, and it's very hard to get them, and it takes ages. Why not doing this on our own for ourselves, right? Um, How was the first, when I'm speaking a lot to early stage startups, seed, pre-seed, Series A, the topic of getting the first few pilot customers. I mean, the technology needs to be built, the technology needs to work, right? So this is very hard enough on many layers and levels. But the getting customers, some have been spun out of different companies, so they were able to secure former colleagues. How is that with you? How is that with you?
Yeah. So first of all, I think although we are kind of a robotics company, of course, we don't produce hardware, which gives us an advantage, right? So that like the prototype that our first set of customers used was actually built within 8 weeks just by me. So so what I wanted to do was basically validate. Because of course, it's one thing to say I have this problem, and I've spoken to other people, and they seem to have this problem, and they think this idea sounds great. But it's then another thing to then put something in front of someone and be like, "Yeah, here it is. Now pay for it." And so I think what was top of my mind is to get something out and basically validate as quickly as possible whether this was something that I felt people needed. And so yeah, it was about getting that out. We then launched in kind of January 2025 was when the kind of we officially first went live. And of course, it had a lot to be desired in terms of it wasn't necessarily completely bug free, let's just say, but it did a lot of the main functionality that actually still exists today. It's just now much more solid. And that's kind of how we did it, right? So then it was about then talking to people. We actually work with a bunch of startups as well, and different companies like advising. So that was a natural extension. So I never like try and sell Neuracore to them if I'm advising, but I mention it and be like, well, I know you're having a lot of these problems. Neuracore does solve that. You can still do it yourself if you want, but the option's there. But that ended up being quite a good funnel as well for us, especially in the early days, right? But it is hard, right? In the very, very early days, especially if you've got a company that's already invested time into their own infrastructure. And obviously they have to make a bit of a gamble then, right? It's like, well, am I going to now go with your company? Especially if you're like brand new, right? If you've only existed for a few months, how on earth am I going to now turn over all your infrastructure? So it's kind of like, yeah, it's like you need to have like that time tax that Neuracore we need to pay for being around long enough and being like, okay, we're not going anywhere, like we're here to stay, sort of thing, and you can rely on us. And also getting those kind of like success stories. So yeah, we have customers now building on us. We've also done the EDU launch, so the academic launch that you might have seen. So now we're offering the platform to free for academic use. And again, it's just about getting people to get familiar with it, build trust with the platform, and understand, hey, look, actually, wow, I can actually move lightning speed using this. So that's kind of our thing for them.
At the moment, there's a lot of you were mentioning hardware here earlier. Excuse me. Um, but more and more often now I see, and this not necessarily reminds me on the SaaS hype a couple of years ago, but everyone is becoming aware of the uh, data bottleneck topic, and from different angles and different not only angles but different for different problems, right? Or different problems with that popping up everywhere. Um, how do you see this? How do you see this? The market emerging when 2025 is now almost a year ago, and in that year you saw a lot of companies coming out of stealth, trying to serve. How do you see that? Because robotics is pretty wide, right? You can do a lot of things within robotics, but in that niche, how is that for you as an insider?
So your question, sorry, is about or people dealing with the bottleneck. Sorry.
The uh, the topic is hardware is a longer topic, but as you
Yeah.
guys are in infrastructure and supporting these kind of companies and data seems to become a hotter topic now and is popping up. So these kind of solutions, what's your take on that?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that well, let me first maybe take a step back and give you my thesis of where we're heading as a
Yeah.
as collective community. So, you know, my research lab in Imperial is all about general purpose robots, and that's pretty much what I've been interested in the last 10 years. But I want to stress that I think it's a research topic, right? So I don't think that we're anywhere near some sort of like general purpose like solution, at least not in the form of a lot what we're seeing, right? Um, in terms of like, we're going to have robots in our homes in the next few years or something, and it's going to be able to do all these different things. So my thesis, and of course the thesis that Neuracore is also building on, is that actually what's going to happen is that robot learning is going to be a huge enabler to be able to tackle specific problems, but way quicker, right? So what I mean by that is that we're going to have companies that are like specializing in particular domains, and they're very, very good at doing that. So, for example, you could imagine a company that's like really, really great threading car looms doing car manufacturing, and it can handle any type of car door, right? It's really, really good at that, and it like leverages like robot learning to be able to do that kind of like, we have some like really multiple dynamics of like threading this loom through the door. And we think that basically that's kind of how it's going to be structured. The reason I think that is because the data bottleneck, I think, is just really hard to solve. And I think the only like I think people are getting really excited because they're seeing what's happening in the language model domain. And it is like remarkable, right? What they can do. But people just forget like how much data they're trained on. Right. I think humans are really, really bad at actually visualizing how big when you get to like really big numbers, we're just really bad, right, as humans, like visualizing how big that actually is. But language models are trained on just so much data, like so much, right? It's like all of human text that's ever been produced, it's like seen basically. And I also like to have like a thought exercise about like, okay, well, imagine now we didn't have the internet and we wanted to try and train something like ChatGPT, and you take the approach that we're doing in robotics, where it's like doing a lot of like data collection. It's like trying to like basically get a warehouse full of people on desks, like writing out basically the entirety of human history, like everything that's on the internet by hand. Now, I haven't actually calculated this, but I would imagine it would take, you know, hundreds of thousands of people and, hundreds of thousands of years to probably get everything down on paper to be able to then train on that. So I really think that like, yes, the data is a problem. Um, but I'm not sure if like we're going to get general purpose robots from just like scaling up the data. I think we can get some really great behaviors by getting data on like specific domains, right? And specialized domains. I think that's going to work really, really well. Until of course we can get very, very good simulation platforms to be able to like generate a lot of this data. But that's still a work in progress, right? We've seen great stuff with sim to real for dynamics, but we're still struggling with the visual aspect, the visual domain. But so yeah, I think we've got a way to go. But one thing I think that's been amazing is like all the hardware we're seeing. I mean, clearly there's so many companies now coming up with like all of this great hardware. And it's making it more and more accessible now to people to come into the field at a really low cost and start doing great stuff. It's because before, at least when I started my PhD, I mean, the cheapest arm you could get was probably a Franca, which you'd have to pay around about 40, 50 grand for. And of course, you've got so many options. It's a really exciting time.
Thanks for giving the insight. I'm asking because I had an episode recorded earlier, and here I was talking to someone who was in that domain, and I was just curious to hear your opinion on that. What's in it for you guys next year? I mean, you said that you've been the company came out in early 2025, so you will have your first anniversary in a couple of weeks, I guess, or a month or two. So what's 2026 looking like for you?
Yeah, so 2026 is all about we've got now a platform that obviously that we've been iterating on over the past year, getting feedback on, and making it just a better and better user experience. We've also grown a lot, so we're now at a team of 14 people. So far cry away from me kind of like hacking away late at night
You
my own,
said
and now we've
40
got
or 14?
14. Yeah. And so we've grown quite a lot at the tail end of this year. So we're not going to do too much growing, I would say, in terms of like personnel, at least that's the current plan. In like early next year, we're going to just focus on taking the platform, continuing to academia. That's like a really big push for us actually over the next kind of year. We really want to show how Neuracore can accelerate the academic community. And of course, to do that, we're offering the platform for free. So you can literally just like if you're typing an email address, and as long as it's got a edu domain or an AC domain, it's going to pop up and say you can join the website for free. And if you're not on the whitelist, you can just click a button to be added, and then we literally kind of go through it every few days and just make sure that genuine universities are being added to the whitelist. And then, yeah, we really want to kind of focus on that, and then also continue to build with our partners that we're currently using us, and of course share their success. Right? That's important to us. So celebrate how quickly they're able to move with us, and then show that as a kind of use case then for others to see and be like, oh wow, how are those guys moving so quickly? Well, it's because of course they're using Neuracore, right? So that's going to be a big push for us as well. So,
I mean, this is the part. because a lot of people think the technology is hard, and it is hard, obviously, right? There's a few technical problems that has not been that had not been solved yet, and you do need to find a solution that is scalable, that is affordable, that is easy to work with, and that works for not only one particular application or environment, but the actually work, and this is something that technical founders in particular. Not avoiding, but neglecting maybe is a better word, like the boring stuff. And that means um, that means customer success. That means you were using the word maintenance before. So all the boring stuff that is not so sexy. But there's a lot of value in that. And especially onboarding and yeah, looking why are people not using the product or the service anymore. And here I do see in my work that a lot of companies are focusing so much on what's next and not looking too far back. One of the examples is, and this is now customer success work, but how to expand an existing customer, right? Or how to evaluate if that was a good customer, and looking back, how is the adoption of the product and these kind of things, right?
Mhm.
But also looking up in the CRM who you haven't follow up with. This kind of work, is that also already present for you guys, or is that still you do need to do the first part first, technology building, community building? Yeah, maybe you can give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, we definitely like request feedback like frequently from people who already use the platform. In fact, a lot of what's come from the platform has evolved from that actually. So again, I'm one for like promoting just moving as quickly as possible and just getting stuff out and try testing the waters. Because worst case scenario, you can always just roll back that feature if people don't like it. But make the assumption that, let's just push this thing, let's hope people like it, they'll give feedback on it. And it's also with like API design, like really, really simple stuff. Um, what we're building at Neuracore is, first of all, it's really, really hard from like a technical perspective, right? Because we're trying to build a platform that is not only a solution for where the field is today, but it needs to be a solution for where the field's going to be in the next 5, 10 years. So we've got to make sure that we're like everything we build is very intentional and like bolstered by where we bet the future's going. And that can only be done obviously by someone and a team that has like deep understanding of this field and where it's been and where it's going. But yeah, coming back to like the API, so not only are you trying to do that, but the API is the hard part because we're trying to build something that doesn't like there's no model for, there's no like template, and so it's like how do you build this like universal like stack that ultimately is going to be used by I don't know anywhere from picking strawberries in a field to like underwater robotics, right? You just don't know, and so you've got to make sure you build it to be but both scalable, but user friendly and intuitive, and not restrictive, right? Not restrictive to any one domain, and not restrictive to academia, too restrictive for academia, and too restrictive for companies. Um, and another good example here of being too restrictive is we actually originally had a lot of all the algorithms and the training code when we first launched closed source. So the kind of logging API was open source because of course that needs to be because it's a Python package. But then when you log all your data and you want to train on it, that actual training mechanism was closed source. And so that was all great. It made sense. But then when others started using it, and even we internally started using our own system and dogfooding it to like do some like research, we were like, oh my God, like we can't iterate on this because it's too now black box, right? Because like everything is like this magical thing where it's like, okay, I want to train on this data set, click go, and I want to train this algorithm, click go. And then it's like, it's too much hidden away from us and obfuscated. And so it became just natural for us to then be like, you know what, it just makes way more sense for all of this application to be open source. And if it wasn't for us, like, A, dog fooding it ourselves, and B, like being close with our customers and like constantly checking in with them, we would never have known that actually.
Mm.
And I think, if we would have just stuck with that and stuck to our guns to be like, no, we need to protect like, the code because it's like our IP. It's like, no, I think actually it's going to be much better and we have more chance of building community if we just as open source as much as possible. And that's kind of philosophy now that we started with a few months back, and we've now continued all the way to like offering a lot of the platform as a whole for free as well. So we're very much pushing to like not only build a cloud platform, but also a community. Like we want to build the robot learning community that connects academics with essentially industry.
Uh, thanks for sharing that part of the story. Um, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday. Remy and his team launched Huma, and I mean he was one of the biggest advocates of open source robotics, right? And especially with Rob Knight and the SO100.
Mhm.
It's good to see that European sees the value and the direction where things could go and can go, right? Yeah, I mean it's hard to, as you said, maintain and build and foster a community. So I think you guys have a lot of things before you. But I think what I've seen so far and from our conversation today, you have the right mindset, the right characteristics of being obsessed with these kind of things and yeah, executing. So I'm looking forward to see what's next for you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your
Yeah.
vision, and looking forward to hopefully in the not too far future see you guys because next year I'm thinking about visiting and joining a few of the almost 100 guests I have now, and I haven't been. I mean, I've been twice to London this year, but this is always a good opportunity to see maybe different parts. Wales is not too far.
Yeah.
That would be good. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for your time, and
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, all the best to you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.